all that.
Good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday morning class where we're studying Swami Prabhavananda's collection of talks given from 1938 to 1976 and edited together by his loving disciple Nalini, Edith Tipple. We just finished How to Overcome Obstacles in Spiritual Life. And now, as the Swami mentioned, the way forward for many of us is meditation. So this next talk is Path of Meditation. Path of Meditation, Swami Prabhavananda. Good Lord, what happened? my control did that thing of taking me backwards several pages. Path of Meditation. Oh, God. Meditation is not so easy. The constant recollectedness of God when the mind thinks of God without any break. It is the most difficult task to bring the mind under complete control. Of course, the main principle is to want to realize God. One has to have that desire. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, for those who have not yet come to understand the futility of sense enjoyments and pleasures and worldly experiences, it is not possible to desire God. And so this is why we must be so sincere with ourselves. Is this what we really want? Or do we want the life of the world in its many different forms? And as Sri Ramakrishna said to those gentlemen from Calcutta who came and challenged him, they'd heard that he was preaching renunciation to the young people of Calcutta. And they came to him, and their spokesperson issued the challenge, tell us, why should we not enjoy the world? And Sri Ramakrishna said, go, enjoy the world. I have no objection. But when you are sick of it, return to me. I have the cure. So we have to be completely sincere with ourselves. Do we want the cure? Do we want the vision and the experience of the divine presence? Or are we still entangled with worldly pleasures and sense objects and so on. No, as long as you are not harming others, as long as you are simply entangling yourself, there's no harm in that. But it is not the ideal. We do not compromise the ideal. The ideal is God realization. That is, as Sri Ramakrishna said, the purpose of human life. So we have to decide, what are my priorities? What deserves my attention? So I'm going to go back and read that quote from Sri Ramakrishna again. For those who have not yet come to understand the futility of sense enjoyments and pleasures and worldly experiences, it is not possible to desire God. So you have to have the interest for God. The interest arises only when you feel this finitude of existence. This arises only when you feel this finitude of existence is a bondage. Only then will you be interested in the struggle to find Him. So Swami Vivekananda said about finitude, we are infinite dreamers, dreaming finite dreams. This is Vivekananda. We are infinite dreamers, dreaming finite dreams. So if we wish to continue dreaming the finite dreams, well enough. But if we wish to turn our attention to the infinity, the Swami says, practical lessons are given in the yoga of meditation, but you have to be interested to follow them. Ultimately, to realize God, meditation is the path. Whether one is following the path of action or knowledge or devotion, the path of action, karma yoga, knowledge, jnana yoga, or devotion, bhakti yoga, whether one is following the path of action or knowledge or devotion, one has to meditate. Now, when the Swami says we have to, he's not one for dogma and doctrines and so on. He's just stating a simple fact. We have to learn to turn our attention within. Turning our attention within is the only way we'll find that divine presence, that living presence, that is the source of our being. And unless and until we learn to do that, we will continue to be distracted by the things of the outward turning senses and mind. We have to learn to meditate, the Swami says. But it is not such an easy thing to do. You may sit, close your eyes, and try to concentrate, but there are distractions. And so there must be preparations. All the spiritual disciplines have one end in view. Now let's hear that. All the spiritual disciplines have one end in view: to achieve purity of heart. What does purity of heart mean? Purity of heart means you're no longer seeking that which is outward, and you are increasingly causing to be dormant those samskaras, those mental impressions that draw you outward. That's what purity of heart means. And so as Sri Chaitanya says, chant the name of the Lord and His glory unceasingly. that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. O name stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self drown deep in the waves of his bliss, chanting his name continually, tasting his nectar at every step, bathing in his name, that bath for weary souls. So when we come to the conclusion that the life, the outward directed life, is futile and finite and never going to be satisfactory, then we develop this desire to turn within. So all the spiritual disciplines, returning to the Swami, all the spiritual disciplines have one end in view: to achieve purity of heart. But what is that purity of heart? What does that mean? It does not mean desiring nothing else but God. Oh, I'm sorry. It means, but what does it mean? It means desiring nothing else but God. When your mind is no longer distracted and your heart loves only God, then it is pure. Well, that sounds like something that is to be attained way down the road. No, 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 no. The journey is the adventure. As we begin to have that desire and that devotion, we become increasingly intent. Why? Because, as Chaitanya points out, we begin to feel that bliss, we begin to taste that nectar, and we begin to experience what it means to bathe in the divine name, the divine presence, and feel less burdened, less in bondage. And so it doesn't mean you have to develop the full out love for God before any progress is made. No. To quote the words of Patanjali, as soon as all impurities have been removed by the practice of spiritual discipline, the limbs of yoga, a man's spirit opens to the light-giving knowledge of God. But we start with practicing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 limbs of yoga, the part that is self-effort, which is transformative from the moment we actually make the decision to do it. Then slowly and slowly, and I'm talking about years now, slowly and slowly, things change. You change. And therefore the universe changes. Your universe changes. So as the Swami says, it is not a matter of acceptance or belief or intellectual understanding, but of following of a path. 1 ounce. Oh, here's just what I was gesturing toward. 1 ounce of practice is greater than many tons of theories. As you practice concentration and meditation, and as love grows, ethical principles become natural. As Sri Krishna says, turn your attention to me with devotion. Holiness itself shall transform you. It is a natural progression. And then the Swami begins to enumerate some characteristics. Men or women of God do not harm any creature. The one characteristic of the holy is that they emanate such love that as you approach, you feel no enmity. You feel no enmity, no negativity. It is said that the lamb and the lion will sit at their feet in harmony. And one can certainly see this in the lives of such as Saint Francis of Tukaram. You see this. It is said that the lamb and the lion will sit at their feet in harmony, because there is only that love abundant there. I will give you one illustration that I have seen. Now, this is Swami Prabhavananda talking about his personal experience. I will give you one illustration that I have seen. Two of us young boys, this was when the Swami was still Abani, before he had taken any vows, and was with Swami Brahmananda. Two of us young boys were following my master out of the monastery, and from both sides of the road people were shouting, "Get away, a mad bull is coming, get away." We saw the bull approaching, and we wanted to protect our old master, so we went forward. But Maharaj, that was their name for Swami Brahmananda, their master, but Maharaj just put his arms out and threw us back. He stood there and looked at the bull. The bull stood there, shaking its head a few times. Then it became calm and moved away. Now, did Brahmananda do some magic? No. It wasn't a question of chanting some magic mantras and things like that. He simply was himself, this pinnacle of love and devotion that was Brahmananda, in the presence of that bull. And the bull's anger, it's whatever had driven it to that point of being called a mad bull, simply evaporated in that presence. Maharaj stood there and looked at the bull. The bull stood there shaking its head a few times. Then it became calm and moved away. As you begin practicing spiritual disciplines, you will feel cheerfulness and faith in your heart. A long face is not religion. From inside will come cheerfulness. And Swami Prabhavananda used to say to anyone who is doing that long-faced kind of piety and solemnity and so on, "Oh, we do not practice long-faced religion here." He would say that to them. He would say that to them in a jolly way, but he meant it. We do not practice long-faced religion here. There will also come the power of concentration and the power to control the passions, the fitness for the vision of God. I'll repeat those qualifications. So first, cheerfulness. There will also come the power of concentration and the power to control the passions, the fitness for the vision of God. These are a way to describe that purity of heart. Knowledge is power, says the proverb, and that is true. Until you know what your mind is doing, you cannot control it. Those who never meditate think their mind is wonderful. They don't know what a rascal the mind is. when the Swami says rascal, he says it affectionately. He doesn't mean, bad mind. Your mind is bad. He just means that it's a trickster. It's constantly trying to convince you that it's in control of everything, when in fact, it's in control of very little. Those who never meditate think their mind is wonderful. They don't know what a rascal the mind is. But when you try to practice concentration and meditation, you begin to realize how distracted and restless it is. Until you know what the mind is doing, you cannot control it. Give it rein. Now, this is something that the Swami taught all of us. When you sit down to practice concentration and meditation, for the first few minutes, it will decrease as time goes on because the necessity of it decreases. But in the first minutes, just watch the mind. Let it go. Just watch what it's doing, which he phrases here as give it rein. Many hideous thoughts may come. You will be astonished that it was possible for you to think such thoughts. But you will find that each day the mind's vagaries are becoming fewer and less violent, that each day the mind is becoming calmer. Now, this is a promise that the Swami is making. It's a promise echoed by many, many, many saints. If you practice, these wonderful things happen. In the first few months, you will find it will have a great many thoughts. Later, you will find that they have decreased somewhat. And in a few more months, you will find that they were fewer and fewer still, until your mind comes under perfect control. But we must practice patiently each day. Now again, here's the Swami saying a must. Sometimes he says we have to, sometimes he says he must, but we must practice patiently each day. It's just like anything else. If you set out to become good at tennis and you only practiced for an hour or so once a week, you'd never become good at tennis. You'd never become good at it. You wouldn't develop the nervous pathways to become good at tennis. The same exact thing is true of practicing meditation. You have to practice each day. Those who are champions at anything, whether it be meditation or tennis or chess, they practice every day. And you've heard it quoted about Pablo Casals, the great cellist. And I mean, he was a great cellist. He was world-renowned, Pablo Casals. At age 93, he was still practicing 6 hours a day. He was asked why. And he said very honestly, a bit humorously, but nevertheless honestly, well, I'm beginning to see a little improvement. As good as he was, at age 93, he could see improvement. This will be true for you as well. So the Swami says, but we must practice patiently each day. Learn to concentrate. What is concentration? Holding the mind within a center of spiritual consciousness in the body. Now we have all these centers of spiritual consciousness in the body. Most of our time and attention is spent in the lower three centers. Even if we're quite refined and we find that our attention is directed toward the, so to speak, higher things of life, art, music, and so on, it will just be 3 and 4 primarily. It won't go above. So listen to this, Swami. What is concentration? Holding the mind within a center of spiritual consciousness in the body. You have to learn these centers of spiritual consciousness from a teacher, and then fix the mind on some divine ideal, either within the body or without. In one Upanishad we read, now this is something that the Swami would repeat often. Within the lotus of the heart, he dwells, where the nerves meet like spokes of a wheel. This is from the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Within the lotus of the heart, he dwells, where the nerves meet like the spokes of a wheel. Meditate upon him as Om, and you may easily cross the ocean of darkness. In the effulgent lotus of the heart dwells Brahman, passionless and indivisible. He is pure, he is the light of all lights. The Nors of Brahman attain him. Oh, this is from the Mundaka. I'm sorry, I thought that was from, there's something very similar in the Svetasvatara. So I'll read that again. This is from the Mundaka Upanishad. Within the lotus of the heart, he dwells, where the nerves meet like the spokes of a wheel. And after some time, you will actually sense this. You may see it or just feel it or whatever. You will feel that there is, at the heart center, that there is all of this energy coming and going like from the spokes of a wheel. Meditate upon him as Om, and you may easily cross the ocean of darkness. In the effulgent lotus of the heart, effulgent, shining, shining, self-effulgent, no cause for the shining, it simply shines. In the effulgent lotus of the heart dwells Brahman, passionless and indivisible. He is pure, he is the light of all lights. The Nors of Brahman attain him. So it's just about the half hour. This is a good place to stop and see if there are any questions, if there are anything that's arisen that you want to have answered, or any comments you want to make about your own experience or what you've learned from somewhere else. This is the place, this is where we do this together, and it's so important. We study together the art of spirituality. Any questions or comments from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Vijay.
Hari Om, Jai Ma. There was a very important, appropriate comment a while ago about the long face. A long face is not religion. Yes, it's a very powerful statement, and I'm applying it at this moment within me to feel it. My question is, you know my style of poetry. It's more about the feelings and emotions deep inside. In general, I'm not sad. I feel the presence of Thakur almost all the time, and that gives me joy. And even when I'm writing this sad poetry, there are two compartments inside. One is where Thakur is present, doing what my pen is doing. And the second is I'm in deep emotion at that time, describing this very sad thoughts. And that becomes the dichotomy. And my question is that really a dichotomy or that's a face of the coin?
No, it's not a dichotomy at all, Vijay. As Krishna says in the Gita, those who feel for others, those who feel the sadness and pain, those who feel samsara are dear to him. So it's just, I say there's no dichotomy because just as was spoken of earlier in another talk, there is no line of demarcation between the world of matter, the realm of matter, and the realm of spirit. It's a spectrum. So as we become more and more experienced in concentration and meditation, actually, let me say contemplation, concentration and meditation, when we look outward, we see the sadness, we see the unhappiness, but it doesn't overturn us or overwhelm us. We may, in certain circumstances, be overwhelmed by grief at the loss of a loved one or something like that. This is just a lower form of knowledge. As Rama said to Lakshmana, when Lakshmana was amazed that Vashishta was weeping at the death of his sons, Lakshmana asked Rama, how can this be? And Rama said, brother, you must understand, he who has knowledge, capital K knowledge, also has ignorance. Well, what is ignorance? Ignorance is simply, as Swami Vivekananda pointed out, a lower form of truth, a lesser form of truth, a lesser form of knowledge. We have the knowledge of the sadness of life. Holy Mother, if you're attending the classes on Tuesday night, we'll see that Holy Mother wept bitterly and copiously over the loss of loved ones. She felt the sadness of the world literally in every fiber of her being. So to feel about it and to express it creatively, it is our nature to be creative. So to express it creatively is fine. The thing is, we must never feel, I say we must never, it isn't auspicious to feel sorry for ourselves. We may experience sadness, we may experience pain, but it's best to look on it as what is there to be learned from this? What can I see in it? So no, there's no dichotomy, there's no compartments. There's simply, at the highest end, there is the full realization of the divine presence. But as Sri Ramakrishna said, even the most expert singer cannot keep their voice always on the highest note. They must come back down.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You bet. Anyone else?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
I have a question about entanglement. And I'm going to use a concrete example for context.
Okay.
Now, the scientists that are working so hard on vaccine for COVID, their work is so valuable to humanity, and they are probably having intense levels of concentration on their work.
Oh, yes.
Now, even if they offer that as a karma yoga, as an offering to God, they may not necessarily be concentrating on God the way, the concentration, meditation description says to. So would that be considered entanglement? And how would they be able to sort of
Well,
reconcile the two?
to us, dear, we don't need to concern ourselves about them at all. Whether they know it or not, they are concentrating on God, because that's all there is to concentrate on. So, are they entangled in the world? Each individual will be in her or his own space. They will be, some may be very, Dr. Richard Feynman, believe it or not, this Nobel Prize winning physicist, quantum physicist, he visited topless dance bars. He went there. He said, I do some of my best work there. Now, what did he mean? He wrote this in his autobiography. What did he mean? One Swamis once denounced him, saying, oh, he was corrupt. I recoiled. I thought, how can we judge such a man? What does he mean when he says he does some of his best work there? We know from his own testimony that his love, he was asked about God, and he said, I know nothing about God, but I'll tell you this. I love Mother Nature, and I implore her to share her secrets with me. So we may never penetrate the mind of another. It's hard enough for us to penetrate our own mind. So we don't judge them. We simply, particularly these scientists that are giving so much to discover how to create a vaccine for the COVID virus. Sure, they're well paid. Sure, they'll get honors for their work and so on. But how do we know what they really care about? Are they entangled? There's no way for us to know. The person for us to worry about is ourselves. Am I entangled? Am I entangled? How much do I get pulled along by my left arm in this direction, as well as my right arm in the direction of the divine? And what do I need to release with my left hand to free me to be pulled more strongly and directly by my right hand? So it's interesting to speculate on what these scientists are and how their minds are, but we really can't know very much. Does that answer the question?
Yes, Brother Shankara. I was putting that as one example of context, but I think your answer did get to what I really wanted. Thank you.
Okay, good. Anything else from anyone? We've heard from our usual suspects. Is there anyone else who would like to say or ask anything? And it's good to hear from our usual suspects, by the way. Hello there, Babaji.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
Yes. In your opinion, there is also a spectrum of the distractions, level of distraction, the kind of distractions that come in the way. Everybody has different kind of distractions and different degree of distraction. Am I right?
Yes, well, Krishna describes it very well in the chapter, The Divine and Demonic Tendencies. There are some people who are just out and out asuras. They hate righteousness. They're mentioned very directly as the enemy in the Chandi. These asuras who hate righteousness. But what does the Chandi say? The Chandi says, "O mother, don't you destroy asuras by mere sight, yet you direct your weapons against them, so that even the inimical ones, purified by the missiles, may attain the higher worlds. Such is your most kindly intention toward them." So each of us, because we are a manifestation of that which manifests, we will contain that which is the asura, as well as that which is the deva. Where do we put our attention? Where do we invest our energy? As yogis will tell you, where your attention goes, there your prana goes, there your life energy goes. And so as we turn our attention away from the darker side of ourselves to the brighter side of ourselves, then we make progress in that direction. But we should not concern ourselves overmuch about what others do. Of course, we must not permit antisocial actions. We must do everything in our power to help ennoble and purify society and its expression. But that is, as has been pointed out by saint after saint, that's not an easy task at all. And I read last week from Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, in which he said all of that is true, all of that pulling and hauling, as he's called it, is there. But he said that is not the me, myself. So we try to focus on who is the me, myself. The more you focus on that, and the more accomplished you become in manifesting that higher self, the more of a great benefit you are to the world. You become a beacon, whether you never move from your home. Swami Vivekananda said, the yogi who sits in the cave and finally thinks one great thought, that person will never be known. Woman or man, that person will never be known, but they will transform the world. So we have no idea what it is that we're emanating. So if you want to know more about that, read Swami Vivekananda's talk that he gave called Powers of the Mind. You'll find it in his complete works, of course.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Robert.
I'm in the process of learning that what we call distractions are not really distractions.
Uh-huh.
That if we remember that we are not the doers, and everything that happens is on purpose. If we didn't do it, then God did it. And if he's doing it, how can we call it a distraction? If we call it a distraction, we're saying, God, you made a mistake here. Wait a minute. And so without training from childhood up to where we are, we have these negative things that we call distractions that we're in the habit of looking at them in that light as a distraction. But if we can just recognize that some of the things that we call the worst thing that can happen, they cause a positive result, a needed result, something down the road.
Beautiful, Robert. Exactly.
That we are unable to see, but
particularly in the immediate moment. Yes.
Yes. I think you got the point.
Oh, absolutely. And this is why Holy Mother says, Sri Sarada Devi says, in time, you will come to understand that all suffering is a blessing. And each one of us will understand that in our own way, in our own time. Babaji, did you have something? You're unmuted, so we're hearing you a little bit. Did you have something you wanted to say or ask?
I do. Thank you, Brother Shankara. I still require the presence of asuras in my life so that when I resonate with that energy, I can identify that shadow within myself and bring the light to that. And that's one of the things that I'm doing right now so that I can identify my shadows and include them in my path forward. And I keep reminding myself that Ravana actually attained liberation at the end because he had served his purpose. In hating Rama, he actually had God in his mind all the time. And even when I'm looking at my resonance with the shadows of asuras, I'm identifying that part of myself that's dysfunctional that I want to bring the light to cleanse so that I can be more present to the divine light of the Divine Mother. And so I still need that energy in my life to identify that part in myself.
Very, very good, Babaji. You're absolutely right. As it says in the Chandi, Mother is the great Devi as also the great Asuri. And in the Sarva Bhuteshus, we're hailing her, saluting her for all of her aspects. One of the last things that is said, the first she's saluted as Mother, you abide in all beings as Mother. And then it said salutations again and again to you who abide in all beings as error. So,
Yes.
so there is absolutely the need, if we're going to be directed this way, to see that, as you said, as a necessity, as a fact of life, and learn from it. Always, as Swami Vivekananda said, we have come here because this is a gymnasium in which we learn. And he puts it even more poetically in the last pages of Raja Yoga, which I will read tomorrow. in the talk on giving thanks, that what it is that we're actually doing as embodied beings. What is it we're actually doing? Why does this happen? And it's a beautiful and poetic, it isn't so much an explanation as it is a celebration of being itself. And who Mother is and who we are and what we're doing in our relationship with manifestation. And how there's reason to give such thanks for it, as Robert was pointing out a bit ago. And as you just pointed out also, Babaji.
Jai Ma, thank you, brother.
Jai Ma indeed. Yeah, we don't think of Mother as error that often, but indeed that's what the Sarvabhuteshu says. Salutations again and again. To you who abide in all beings as error. Anything else from anyone? All right, we'll read on a little bit. We've got a bit longer. So we just finished that quotation from the Mundaka Upanishad. The knowers of Brahman attain him. Of course, for this, you have to sit and try to concentrate regularly. Apart from that, my master taught us what is called the simple yoga, the simple way to attain God. Quote this is from Maharaj, keep recollectedness of God as often as you can, while you are sitting, standing, walking, and under all conditions, try to feel the presence of God. Keep that recollectedness of God until it becomes a habit. And of course, Sri Krishna in chapters 3 and 4 of the Gita says, here's how to keep that recollectedness. Offer everything you do to me. Everything. And he gives this extended list that includes some surprising things. Offer everything to me. So that's a good way to actually do what Swami Brahmananda Maharaj is recommending. So I'll read that again. This is what Maharaj called the simple yoga. Keep recollectedness of God as often as you can, while you are sitting, standing, walking, and under all conditions, try to feel the presence of God. Keep that recollectedness of God until it becomes a habit. Through such practice, when you come to a stage of unfoldment, when your mind really can meditate, when there is no distinction, no distraction, then the vision of God will come. Once you go into that state where the world has disappeared, just God is, when you come back, you are an illumined soul, and that is something that you have attained for eternity. I'm going to read that again. Keep that recollectedness of God until it becomes a habit. Through such practice, when you come to a state of unfoldment, when your mind really can meditate, when there is no distraction, then the vision of God will come. Once you go into that state where the world has disappeared, just God is. When you come back, you are an illumined soul, and that is something that you have attained for eternity. Swami Prabhavananda said again and again and again to us, you do not have to wait for another lifetime. Make the effort in this lifetime. And if indeed you have not attained this Savikalpa Samadhi, which is what he just described, Savikalpa Samadhi, by the time that you drop your body, the divine presence will give you that gift as you leave the body. You don't have to go to Benares. The divine presence came into this age to unchain us and set us free. And so we are able to, if we make that effort and make progress in that direction, we become one of those. What does the evening prayer, breaker of this world chain, say? O merciful, if we take any hold upon God in our prayer, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. So it does not matter if your Ishtadevata, your chosen ideal, is some form of the mother that's taken form in this time, whether it's Jesus Christ, whether it's Sri Ramakrishna or Holy Mother, it doesn't matter. They all did that. They have nothing to attain for themselves. So their austerities, their attainment is only so they can share it with us. Only for that reason. And if we manifest our yearning to be one with the divine, to be part of the divine, to no longer be attached to or entangled with the world, then the divine presence, promise after promise after promise, in every one of the scriptures is made. What does it mean that the divine presence will look over us lovingly as a mother and father? That the divine presence will support and nourish us as a mother and father. So we have just a few minutes left. The Swami's about to make a turn here. He's about to give more explanation of meditation. So we have just a few minutes left. Any more comments or questions?
Hari Om Shankaraji.
Balaji, I'm so glad you spoke up. What do we hear from you?
No, because it was so wonderful, the whole, teaching, and it really, but everything is, he's teaching us like we have to turn everything to a Godward turn.
That's his phrase.
This is exactly, and also whatever the experiences we face, whether it's good or bad and all those things, as long as we see this is the God's gift to me, it depends upon what I do with that gift, how I handle it.
Yes.
Accumulate more karma or do I dissipate my karma?
Mm-hmm.
And with this thoughts, anything that comes to us is a gift. We have to learn how to handle that gift.
Yes. And how to handle that gift? First, whatever happens to us, whatever each day and night contains, we offer it to the divine.
Yes.
Whatever it is, we offer it to the divine. And then we accept what comes back, what actually transpires in that day or that night. We accept that as their gift. It certainly transforms our attitude toward it, and our attitude toward it changes our behavior. And slowly and slowly, we climb the steps, as Sri Ramakrishna says, to the roof. Thank you, Balaji. You're absolutely right.
And also what Swami was said, that was very wonderful. But the only thing is, of course, I don't know how these scientists, how intensely they're focused on those things. But Swami Prabhavananda gives the example of a neurosurgeon. When he's doing the critical parts of the surgery, he is in a, samadhi. He has no other thought. He has full concentration of that one.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if he is a realized one, he understands this is all God's will.
Yes, a neurosurgeon or Pablo Casals,
Yes.
or a Jack Nicklaus, the great golfer, they all speak about being in the zone.
Yes.
Of having no thought of themselves at all, but only what they're doing. The doing is the being and doing are one and the same. And so they don't, Jack Nicklaus, the great golfer, one time was playing in one of the great tournaments, and some important people were standing at the rope line. Important people, VIPs. And they reached out their hand to him to shake his hand as he went by. And he didn't reach out, he didn't reach back, he didn't shake their hands. And so in the tent afterwards, after he'd won the tournament, they were remonstrating with him about it, saying, "Oh, why did you ignore us? We deserve your attention." And Nicklaus said, "I didn't even see you, let alone hear you. All I was thinking about was what the next shot that I needed to make was and how I needed to make it." And then he said, "I was in the zone." Whether they accepted his explanation or not is up to each one of those people. But it certainly is understandable to any of us who practice in this direction. So wonderful. So glad you brought up Swami Priyananda's neurosurgeon example. Perfect example. Anything else from anyone? Okay, it's a little afternoon. We'll let it rest there. We'll start next week with meditation means. And thank you all for coming. It means so much these days. I'm so thankful for you and your presence with us. So we'll close with our peace chant, which is so badly needed now, this peace in the world. So join in your thoughts with this prayer. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. And of course, because we can't do it except in this way, we'll put you in the Mother's loving and protective embrace. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be cheerful, and may you have peace of mind. So until tomorrow morning, tomorrow morning the talk is on giving thanks in honor of this holy season into which we're entering, this season of holy days. There are many, many, and many of the traditions of the world is such a holy season. We've just had Diwali, and now we'll have Thanksgiving, and then going on into, there's, in the Jewish tradition, there's Sukkot and Hanukkah. Of course, Christmas is coming. So we're entering into the holy season. And I have a recommendation for you all. Sometime during this holy season, watch, I'm making this recommendation, go on YouTube and find the movie Scrooge, 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 starring Alistair Sim, S-I-M. It's a black and white film made in 1951, and it is about the transformation of a man who lived in fear and constant dread of loss, and I won't tell you more. Just it's about his transformation. And on Christmas morning, after his transformation, he sings, "I don't know anything. I never did know anything. I don't know anything, all on a Christmas morning." But as the Swami said, his experience transformed him. Now he behaves entirely differently. He's free from fear. And instead of hoarding his wealth, he gives away his wealth. Anyway, that's enough of a commercial. Scrooge, Alistair Sim, 1951. And if you can, watch it with some others. Watch it with some other people. You know, I know it's hard these days in this time of isolation and distancing. But if you can, watch it with others, because it's such a joyous film and so well made. So that's my plug.
Isn't that Vivekananda did the same thing to David Rockefeller?
Yes.
You know, he transformed too. So
Yes, yes. And of course, we have all of the examples of Sri Ramakrishna. If you want to read in the last issue of American Vedantist, which you can find at American Vedanta, AmericanVedantist.org, there is a beautiful long essay on the transformative power of Sri Ramakrishna. So if you haven't read that, AmericanVedantist.org, issue number 77, which was the last one. And I don't remember the exact title, but you'll recognize it, The Transformative Power of Sri Ramakrishna. Anything else from anyone before we sign off? All right, dears.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
hope to see any of you who wish to attend tomorrow morning. Together we will give thanks. Jai Ma.
Thank you. Bye.